this rather snappy, won't you? I have some very heavy thinking to do before 10 o'clock.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Get It Right Texoma with the trio, Mike, Terry, and Trey, and Happy New Year.
Yes.
This is really, it's not our first show of the year. We had Ann Arnold Ogden on already, and so she was, well, we actually recorded her interview in 24.
So this is our first recorded.
This is our first official.
Has she dropped now? She's
she's
dropped now?
Yeah.
I need to send that to her.
So anyway, welcome. Happy New Year. Hope you're, I tell you what, 2025's got to be a better year. It's got to be.
Well, I think all the earmarks are there.
I hope so. We don't have this on our list, and we can get more into this later when we get more information. But in the days prior to us recording this episode, there were 2 terrorist attacks in this country.
Yeah, on New Year's.
One in New Orleans. Guy drove a rented truck into a crowd of people.
Yeah.
Last I heard, the death toll was 10 or 11.
15.
Is it 15? 15
Yeah,
people dead
people
now?
hurt.
A lot of people hurt. And then there was a Tesla truck that was bombed. A bomb was detonated.
Don't know about a bomb, but some explosive devices were detonated. It wasn't really a...
It blew the truck up.
It was a pretty big bomb. And then there
was
were fireworks.
There was a lot of fireworks, and there was a lot of stuff in it, and some accelerants.
I don't think it worked quite like the guy thought it would.
No.
Here's the part about this, and again, more information will come out in the days ahead. At least it better. The 2 guys that were involved in this, in each attack, apparently both served at Fort Bragg.
Well, they were both.
By
the way, let's go back to this. Let's clear this up. These were both Americans.
Yes.
Right.
These were not
U.S. born.
They were not people who came in through the southern border. And I'm not saying that there's not threats out there. I'm just simply saying these 2 things were not people who snuck in on the southern border and are from Syria or some other place like that. These were American citizens and Americans that served in the military.
But they committed terrorist attacks here in this country.
Sure. So they're terrorists.
The guy in New Orleans had an ISIS flag on the back of his truck. It also turns out, I've heard in the last 24 hours prior to us doing this episode, that the trucks were both rented from the same company.
Oh.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
So for the FBI to come out and say, "Oh, there's no connection," bullcrap. There's absolutely a connection. They are connected somehow.
There's some similarities for sure. I mean, and you got to start tracing all those things and find out.
I don't believe too much in coincidences.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very coincidental.
I think that they're going to find out whether they tell us honestly or not. Most people probably look at this and go, "Yeah, this was a planned attack. This was a coordinated attack on some level." Now, maybe it was just these 2 guys. Maybe there were other people involved. My spidey senses go off and tell me there's more than 2 people involved.
I tend to agree with that. But let's look. We don't want to jump to too many conclusions and go down some bad rabbit trails. I do think there's a good possibility, a very strong possibility that these are somehow connected. But to say they were both had served at Fort Bragg at some point. Probably everybody who's been probably half the Army, people who have served in the Army have been at Fort Bragg at some point. Fort Bragg's a massive base. It's not.
It is.
It's not Shepherd Air Force Base.
But if they were, in the same,
if they were in the same unit, same squadron, or something, that's a whole different deal.
I think if you're an investigator, one of the things you do when you're looking at multifaceted crime like this, one of the things you do look for are what are the commonalities.
Well, absolutely, you need to do that. But what I'm simply saying is you can't. I mean, to me, that's a very broad one. I want to look for some more narrow. Yeah. And I think they're there. What I'm saying is I believe they're there, but what I'm saying is I want to look, they were both at Fort Bragg. Well, so was millions and millions and millions of people at one time.
Sure.
But they both were in the military.
Yeah.
Okay. Once again, there was millions of people, but they were both in the military, okay? Then they were both at Fort Bragg. But now let's start really finding some specifics. The car rental thing, that's an unusual one now. It's not it's not Hertz or
no, it's not.
Something rent a car. I don't know. I don't even know who it was. I'd have to look and see who it is if I've ever heard of it. It's not national or anything like that.
The article that I read described the company. I don't recall the name of it right now, but they described the company as the Airbnb of vehicle rentals. Is what they described it as.
Okay.
So it was no one I'd ever heard of before.
Turo.
And no one I'd ever used.
Car sharing app called.
Okay.
Turo.
Well, and see now that's different than. That is different than like renting from Hertz or National. Then,
yeah.
That's if that's an Airbnb, that sounds like something that you were. I don't know anything about them, but
somebody has a vehicle and they put it up for rental.
Rental, yeah.
I heard of doing that kind of thing with like, motorhomes and travel trailers and things like
there's
that.
There's actually a guy here from Wichita Falls who went off to. I think he went off to Harvard or MIT. And he ended up in San Francisco and started a company at one point who was working on something like this. And it was like people who were, and I think it was at LAX. Mm-hmm. You were going to be parked there for a week or 2 weeks at LAX while you're out of town. You could rent your car out for people to use there at the time.
Is that Dr. G's? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say he's been involved in a lot of different. That family is just. Wow.
Yeah. So,
but I just wanted to mention that because it's topical. It's something that just happened.
Yeah.
And obviously not a great way to start our new year.
No, absolutely not.
But I do think that the FBI, the authorities, they need to be more forthcoming with information as much as they can. When they hold back information, when they look like they're trying to keep information from the public, then you open that door even more to speculation and assumptions.
And that's the biggest problem. The best thing you can do is be transparent.
Exactly.
Because what you do is you create a void.
That's right.
And then we're desperate as human beings to know answers.
Sure.
Especially of things that are baffling us.
It's your human nature.
It's our human
curiosity.
Nature. And so we're gonna make shit up.
Yeah.
If you don't help us fill that void with something that's plausible.
Yeah.
Then as human beings, we're more likely to speculate.
You got to put the facts out there. We're all big boys and girls, and we can handle it. Tell us the truth, and stop treating us like mushrooms. Feeding us crap and keeping us in the blind.
Part of it is though. But by the same token, I say on the other side of that is let the investigation happen.
Well, sure.
Don't everybody just jump to conclusions. That is one of the other problems. People are so desperate now in this information age to come out and just say something. Because people will jump to their own conclusions. So it's best to let things happen, let it go slowly, let all the investigation happen, and then demand answers.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk about our local restaurant in focus this week here. We do this every show. We talk about
pull their website up real quick.
We talk about a locally owned, usually family owned restaurant here in town. And this week, we're talking about Pioneer of Texas. Now, for those of you that aren't from the local area and don't know, the Pioneer restaurant chain.
The website, the home landing page on the website's got their famous enchilada plate.
Okay, well, we'll pull that
up. Trying to pull that up. So, not working.
Well, the URL that they...
Oh, okay.
PioneerTexasRestaurant.com.
Well, so
Pioneer Restaurant.
The Pioneer Restaurant chain originated here in Wichita Falls
in 1943.
Yep. And at one time there were 7 or 8 Pioneer restaurants. There we go. What input do we have that on there, by the way?
That's on the 4.
4. Okay. There we go. So there's a picture there.
That is the enchilada plate right there.
That is
the Pioneer enchilada plate.
Ooh.
Probably the most famous thing they serve there is that enchilada plate.
Coleslaw? Looks like coleslaw.
I don't care what it is. It's the enchiladas we're after.
Yeah, the enchiladas at the bottom.
But anyway.
You can move all that other crap off of the enchiladas here.
Yeah. So here's the deal. So you said 1943. So they had these multiple Pioneer restaurants around town. They dominated the restaurant scene here for many, many years. Yeah. The McBride family owned it. They also had McBride's branded restaurants, McBride Landing Cattle, which is downtown, McBride Seafood, which was west of the city, and several others in town. But
El Gordo's was their Mexican restaurant.
El Gordo's
that had their enchiladas.
Yes, which is right next door to the
McBride's
downtown.
Yeah.
So anyway, over the years, the family sold off multiple restaurant properties, locations closed down, And only one of the Pioneer restaurants now is back as far as I'm aware, is actually back in McBride family hands, and that's McBride's Steaks on Maplewood. But Pioneer of Texas sprang from that same family, that same organization, that same group of restaurants, and still serves, as far as I know, much the same menu that they served 50, 60 years ago.
The recipes came with the sales and stuff, but they're well known for chicken fried steak, well known for enchiladas.
That's
great food there, good people.
Take a look at that, will you?
Yeah. So if you
that's awesomeness, right?
If you got
there.
a hunkering for some good down home cooking,
McBride,
Pioneer of Texas, out on Maplewood is a great place to go.
Yeah, great food and great restaurant, and like I said, been around since '43. There's not many chains of any sort that have been around. Well, I guess we're going into 9 decades now, nearly.
Yeah. Well, and I think they're actually, the McBride family started doing restaurant sales before that. I think they started around in the World War I era. I think the Pioneer was that's when they branded it. Pioneer was in '43, and I don't know that 100%. That was on their website.
The story I had heard previously is that they started serving sandwiches
at Cole Field.
The World War I airfield here. So that would have been 1917, 1918, somewhere in that era. The war ended, I guess, in 18. So somewhere between 1916 and 1918. And then, over the years, they opened up restaurants. It just their food, it caught fire. People loved it.
The history is out there somewhere. I read it while waiting on my food at a Pioneer restaurant one time. They had our history, and I read it, but that was 20 years ago, so I'm kind of going off my my memory there. But anyhow, also, guys, we in less than a week, we lost Bryant Gumbel, Jimmy Carter, and Linda Lavin.
Yes,
what an eclectic group that was.
I know. Well, Jimmy, I'm not sure how old was Bryant Gumbel.
He was in his 80s, I believe.
Okay. Former host of the Today Show.
Mm-hmm. And football. He did a lot of sportscasting, too, as well.
Yeah. Jimmy Carter was 100 years old. Mm-hmm. He's been in hospice care for quite a while now.
I think over a year and a half.
He had a brain tumor.
Yeah.
And I think after his wife Rosalind passed, he went into hospice care. And then, of course, he passed away at 100 years old. And then Linda Lavin was 87 or 88.
Yeah.
Of course.
By the way, that's Alice.
Yeah, for the TV show Alice. Yeah, and
I think she spent really most of her career on the stage.
Yes.
So if you weren't into theater, you probably didn't know that she was still doing things.
Yes.
But her big show was Alice, and I thought that Alice was a cool show.
Yeah.
When I was growing up.
Yeah.
And what was the most famous line from Alice?
Kiss my grits.
Mel, kiss my grits.
Flo. So and if I'm not mistaken, the TV show sprang from a film called Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
I think that's right, yeah.
And I think the only star from the film that transitioned over to the TV show was Vic Tayback, who played Mel. He was in the film, and then came over to CBS to do the TV show.
Stow it was his big word. Stow it, Alice. Stow it, Vera.
And, you look at that. Of course, now. Well, I think all of the main cast have passed away now.
Oh, I'm sure. I don't know if the son
he has passed away.
Has he? Yeah.
He passed away. And I know we lost him a few years ago. But Linda Lavin, I think she was the last of the original cast.
Was she? Yeah.
To still be around.
I always thought it was funny because Vic Tayback was interesting. When you see him, and that was my first experience of seeing Vic Tayback was in that. And then when you see him in some of his other roles, and he's completely, you forget that these people are actors. That is not really them. That is a character they're playing.
I can't remember what show it was. It was an old Western. Maybe it was Bonanza or something like that, where he's playing a character.
I think it was on Bonanza. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
And you go, is that Mel?
Is that Mel?
That's Mel.
Yeah. He didn't have his Navy tattoo on, his mother or whatever.
A little sailor's hat and all that. He didn't have all that. And, to see him in that Western garb and in that setting, it was kind of weird because when we were growing up, it was Mel. So, Anyway, well, we're going to talk about some of the top stories of 2024, of which there are many. So I guess we'll just start with January.
Yeah.
2024.
Most of this I kind of put in somewhat of order of month. Tried to.
Big stories of January of last year. A Boeing jet made an emergency landing after a panel known as a door plug blew out mid-flight.
Fortunately, nobody was actually injured in the thing.
Well, in the movies,
You'd be traumatized, but
in movies, when a
injured.
plane depressurizes, people get sucked out.
yeah, well,
I don't think that happened in this case.
well, if you got your seatbelt on, you're not going to be sucked
You're
out.
not going
for
to,
sure. But it has.
That's
to be
a scary thing.
Oh my God! Can you imagine being in a plane all of a sudden?
Loud,
Yeah.
Your ears pop and
Yeah, it's got to be completely traumatizing. But
Yeah.
it did happen, and of course that was a major thing for Boeing because it launched investigation into Boeing,
Yeah.
And-
and they've lost billions
wow. Yeah.
in stock pricing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I think they announced that they're going to lay off about 17,000 workers.
Oh my gosh.
Well, but the thing is, though, on that, the Spirit Airlines was spun off. That's an assembly company. This was in Wichita, Kansas. I was up there for eight years, and Boeing had a big presence up there. And when they had spun off the assembly or or a fuselage assembly or something off to this other company that called Spirit, so because they even had contracts with Airbus as well.
Okay.
And now they're bringing it back. I think it was the last I had heard about as a result of some of the issues they've had, quality control and all that. They're getting that, pulling it back underneath. FAA's been all over them.
Oh, I'm sure they have.
Along those lines, I saw a story probably a week or so before Christmas. They were talking about all the holiday travel. The number of people that were traveling by car versus airplane, versus flying, I was like, that it was under. I want to say the number was under 1 million that were expected to fly somewhere within the continental U.S.
Right.
versus driving. Now they didn't. I don't think they were counting international flights. And obviously, if you're going to Hawaii or Alaska, you're going to fly. You're not going to drive.
I was going to say,
Don't they have a ferry?
yeah.
Catch a cruise ship.
It's a long, yeah.
Better leave 8 days ahead of time. But anyway, but no, it's it was the number was really stunning to me, and the number of people driving it was just a gargantuan number of people driving.
But we know, I think a big part of that is it's such a pain, and plus they nickel and dime you now, literally. They are charging some outrageous fees. Now I flew to Florida when I went to the Apple meeting and everything that I went to back in October. And, that was the first time I'd flown in quite a while. And it was a good experience. Now, I was looking at, what was the airline? Either Frontier or Spirit. I've heard don't do Spirit for sure.
Yeah.
But Frontier is probably not too far away from the way they, but yeah, their pricing was like.
Look, yeah, here's Trey's travel tip. If you're going to fly, just fly American, United, Delta, fly somebody who's a name brand character. You're going to pay a little bit more.
Yeah, it's
not a huge amount.
No, when you get it all, when you have to do all
that's
that
what I'm
stuff,
saying. You're going to pay a little bit more up front, but you're not going to get nickel to dime. And quite frankly, I'm just going to put it out there. When you get air travel that is so cheap that everybody can afford it, you get people who aren't used to flying and show up in their pajamas and flip
like
flops.
the Walmart of
It really is. It kind of is, and it's kind of like everybody just shows up there, and you see more fist fights and stuff like that in the airport. There's a lot of that, and I think part of it is because air travel used to be kind of one of those things. It was kind of
dressed
expensive.
up.
Yeah, but it was kind of expensive, and you kind of saved up, and not everybody had a credit card. Yeah,
it was really cultured.
But now it's almost like we're going to run you in there like cattle. And you're going to act like cattle.
Southwest has been for a long time. Now they're doing reserve seating, but yeah.
Yeah, so I would say just stick with one of the major airlines.
Yeah.
And in the end, you're probably going to. I don't know that you'll save money, but you're probably going to break even or close to it, and I think you're probably going to have a better experience.
Yeah. Well,
overall.
Well, again, since I hadn't flown in so long, when I sat down, even on I flew American, and ultimately when I sat down to pick my seats. And if it's a center seat or a aisle, there's certain seats you're going to pay a little extra for. And they say they have participated in this nickel and diming as well. If it's one of the rows that has a little bit extra room, with the exit
but that's
row
fine.
and all
You know
that.
ahead of time. You can either pick that seat or not pick that seat.
Well, that's true, but it's still anyway. I just was surprised how, and then depending on your ticket, the one you get, whether you get a checked baggage. Of course, I didn't need checked baggage, but they checked my bag anyway. That's your hack, by the way.
Yeah.
Used to be the hack is you could do a gate check, and they didn't even do it. Now, both times I flew, they wanted me to check it.
Yeah.
So even though I didn't have to pay for it, I would have had to pay.
Yeah,
otherwise.
if you gate check it, then they don't. There's no, you're not paying the extra.
unless they see it and they go, that's too big, then they'll charge you.
Yeah. But also, you have people who
People don't want to fly anymore.
you have people that are trying to put stuff into overhead bins. You have your Americans and your stuff like that tend to not be quite as critical, but then you have your spirits and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah,
it better fit down in that overhead, the overhead
that little
bin,
thing.
the template and all that.
I had a guy tell me the other day over the holidays he flew out because of they were going to meet a family member and then they were flying up to the Northwest, and they flew out of San Antonio. And he said it was a much better experience than he's ever had at DFW.
See, I don't mind DFW. I've been in and out of DFW a bunch of times. I pick people up there. I've dropped people off, and I've flown in and out of there. DFW doesn't bother me at all. I hear that all the time. But
Did you do you've flown more than me, I guess, but do you do the TSA pre? Did you do that? Yeah, I did. I went ahead and signed up. It's like, good for 5 years or something.
Something like that, yeah.
So it's worth,
I've already renewed it. In fact.
Yeah, okay.
Also, January of 2024, some Jeffrey Epstein documents were unsealed, revealing the names Prince Andrew and former President Bill Clinton.
And this did not make the news as much as I think it should have.
That was deliberate.
Well, yeah, I know, but it's like, why is it that Bill Clinton, of all people, gets a pass and has gotten a pass for years? He got a pass when he was in office.
I know.
I will say, Bill Clinton. I believe that Bill Clinton was the beginning of the new era where politicians can get away with stuff.
Yeah.
Because one cycle before that, we've talked about it right here, was Joe Biden and Gary Hart.
Yeah.
They were one cycle before, weren't they one cycle?
Yeah, well, in 1988, the Democratic Party, they didn't just throw Gary Hart under the bus. They backed that thing up and ran over him again.
And Gary Hart, he did have an affair with somebody, but he didn't do it while he was in office.
No.
In the White House.
He was still a potential nominee.
A potential nominee. Then Joe Biden was ousted because of plagiarism, if you remember, I believe, in that same cycle.
Yes,
But
he
then
sure
Bill
was.
Clinton comes along, and he pulls what he pulls where he does have sexual relations with that woman in the White House on the clock, and she was an employee of the White House. I mean, you think about that on so many different levels.
Yeah.
That was wrong on so many different levels. Somebody having an affair with somebody, I'm not for that. I'm against it because you shouldn't have affairs, in my opinion. But two grown adults making a choice to engage in sexual, whatever, on their own, that's their business. But when you are doing it in the people's house, while you're on the clock, and with somebody who's on the clock as well, and being paid by the taxpayer, and you are their supervisor, you're their boss.
And they're the
There's
ultimate
so
boss.
many things that were wrong there, and where with all the feminists?
Oh, yeah.
He got away with it,
Exactly.
and there was women that were letting this go, and it's like, why aren't you screaming bloody murder that this guy had power over this person?
I will tell you, I know women who I would characterize them as hardcore feminist types, and they absolutely fawned all over Bill Clinton.
I know it.
They couldn't get enough of him, and there was one, I won't say a name, there was one that I knew, haven't seen or spoken to her in many, many years now. But I asked her point blank, because I knew what her position on Bill Clinton was, and I knew what her position was on certain social issues too. And I asked her point blank, I said, how do you reconcile your beliefs about certain male behaviors with the president's behavior and treatment of an intern under his direct control? She went nuts on me. I mean, literally. Called me names you wouldn't believe and worse. And I'm like, It's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
It's a legitimate question. So, I think you're right. That was the beginning of that era. I mean, I'm telling you right now, if I'm president and I'm walking into the Oval Office, my first question is, has anybody disinfected the Resolute desk since '98?
Exactly.
Can we get a black light in here?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying.
I mean, just, let's check it out.
Bill Clinton was the age of the new era where people could get away with things that they weren't able to get away with.
But now to be fair, and we're all not any one of us was an original Trump fan.
No,
right? We this is not who we would have chosen by any means.
Wouldn't even chosen him this cycle.
Right. But he ended up being the Republican nominee, which is the closest to what we believe. So, given that, just interesting that this Trump, in his current form, for a lot of reasons, there's no way that he would have made it. Now, sometimes, given where we're at, have we lowered our standards? All that kind of stuff.
Oh,
and so now we've lowered our standards. But given who ended up in the top. He ended up being that person.
We are clearly, as a society, we are more accepting of certain things than we would have been 30, 40, 50 years ago.
I think social media has a whole lot of that to do.
I think it does.
But at the same
plays
time,
a role.
People are desensitized.
Yeah, but I think that also there's some things that I think that we're not. Who cares, right? There's some things about Clinton or any of them, like, who cares? To the extent that, can he get the job done? We've accepted more.
Well, but I agree with that. I agree with that, except for you can't do it on the clock and you can't do it.
Well, no, I'm not.
Trump was a scumbag in his past. Okay, there's no doubt.
Right.
And he cheated. I mean, he cheated on his first wife with his second wife, and I don't know about Melania. I don't know what his business is. And honestly, I could from a morality standpoint say, hey, I think it's wrong to cheat on your partner.
Oh, yeah.
But that's as far as it goes, and that's as far as it would have gone with Clinton. I don't care that Bill Clinton had an affair with Monica Lewinsky.
Right.
I care that Bill Clinton had an affair with Monica Lewinsky based on who she was,
right,
and when it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what bothered me. Okay. But as far as Trump goes, he's a scumbag for cheating on Ivana with Marla Maples.
Well, out here in the regular real world where the rest of us live, corporate America, whatever. The CEO of whatever gets caught having an affair with, an intern or an employee or someone under their control. It's going to create a major scandal, at least within that company.
Right, it's not what's good for the company.
And it's probably going to result in that guy or gal resigning from their position over it at a minimum. So, and you mentioned social media playing a role, but here's the thing, though. With Bill Clinton, when he came on the scene in 1992, there was no social media.
No, I agree. I think that was the beginning.
When the Lewinsky affair happened, there really wasn't any social media. We had America Online. I'm sorry, I don't count that as. That was a message board, and they gave you a song.
But
you got
we
a
did
song.
have the 24-hour news cycle at the time, and that started it as well.
Right,
but I think social media has exacerbated the standard of being lowered. Is what I'm saying.
I think it's easy to argue here that in that release of that information between Prince Andrew and former President Clinton, Prince Andrew definitely got the worst end of the treatment on this.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
He
deserved it, by the way.
Done.
Yeah.
Done.
Okay.
Moving on to February, the Kansas City Chiefs win back-to-back Super Bowls, first time in 20 years.
Yep.
That they'd done that.
Or that anybody's won a back-to-back Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was huge. March, a container ship struck Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge.
That was,
and that was.
Jeez, what's this?
That's still, to me, that's still big news with a lot of unanswered questions. There's still question marks all over that.
Yeah, why did that happen?
Why did it happen? People lost their lives. It impacted the lives of millions of people in that area.
That's exactly, you said it exactly right, Mike. Not only did there were a few people that lost their lives in the accident itself, but the impact for people in that area was enormous. And how many people did lose their lives because they couldn't use that bridge to get to hospitals? Right. I mean, there's a lot of knock-on effects that could have happened based on that. That did happen.
Yeah, and
a lot of it's unmeasurable, unknown, because you don't know about grandma who had that bridge been open, maybe could have gotten to the hospital and gotten saved faster or whatever.
And this fell out of the news cycle very quickly.
Yeah.
It was there and gone in no time.
Well, just a quick update. In October, the owner and manager of the cargo ship that caused the deadly Baltimore bridge collapse have agreed to pay more than $102 million in cleanup costs. But here's the other side of it. It could cost as much as $2 billion to rebuild
It's going to be $2 billion to rebuild it. Yeah,
$2 billion, though?
and it's supposed to be rebuilt in 28.
Wow, that's I just the bill just how a bridge is it costs that much? Wow,
Look what we spend just on repaving roads. Just repaving roads in our own community will cost us millions of dollars. I forget, somewhere down the line I've heard how much per mile it is.
Right.
It's a lot of money.
But then,
it's
a bridge. I don't know about this bridge, but most bridges, though, in a town like that, have a strategic purpose, right?
Oh yeah,
because to travel way around to go to another bridge,
and that's what they're having to do now.
Right.
Is now you're having to reroute traffic. You're adding. For some folks, maybe hours.
Well, here in Wichita Falls is a perfect example. There's an overpass that goes from the traditional downtown area to East Side Drive, and that was put in. And there were a lot of black leaders back in the, I don't know, the 60s or 70s or whenever they did that. That was put in for that reason, because it was an inconvenience for East Side residents
because of the railroad,
because of railroad tracks. And a whole lot of times there's a major railroad hub in Wichita Falls,
7th Street.
Exactly. And going across there were times that there were railroad cars in place, and East Side residents couldn't get to the other side of town, but especially hospitals, ambulances, and all that.
Yeah.
And Charlie Ferris was a big part of having that happen. Wichita Charlie Ferris was a huge part of making that bridge happen, and she fought for that, and that was the right thing to do. So you're saying that's a perfect example locally of a strategic thing, because East Side residents could not always cross the railroad tracks when they needed to. So that overpass was constructed so they would have access to the rest of the town at any time.
I used to work on the east side, and years and years ago, and there were times where you would try to use that 7th Street crossing.
A lot of times,
and it's completely blocked, and you come back through there 5-6 hours later, and it was still blocked.
Yeah.
So for hours at a time, that intersection would be inaccessible and totally unusable.
And before you had that overpass, you had to go all the way down one direction or the other to maneuver there. So.
Yeah, you'd have to go. I guess you would had to have gone down Business 287, Scott Avenue, and come around and catch what was then East Side Drive from that, or Highway 240.
You had to go all the way down to the end there, or you could have gone to, depending on where you lived in East Side, if you lived closer, you could have gone up to 5th Street, or I'm sorry, not to 5th Street, I'll take that. You've gone up to Lincoln Street, and gone under the Lincoln Bridge.
Yeah.
Not bridge. It's a bridge. It's not the Lincoln. It's not the Lincoln Tunnel. It's just it's a railroad track.
Railroad trellis, that goes over the
So you could have done that, but that's still inconvenient. And when you're talking about minutes, if you're having an ambulance or something, that can make a difference.
Also in March, anti-Israel protests erupt on college campuses. We saw a lot of violence, a lot of hateful rhetoric being thrown at Israel,
and that was
college campuses.
That started, I believe, sometime around March, but it carried through through the end of that second semester of college, and I mean, there were lawsuits being filed. There were colleges that lost millions of dollars because there were a lot of Jewish donors that were going, hey, if you guys can't take care of this. And look, I'm all in favor of protests. I'm all in favor of allowing protests. I'm not a big protest person myself, but allowing protests, peaceful protests. But when you start impeding somebody else's way, keeping them in the library, not letting them get out of the library and that sort of thing, and putting fear into people, then you're wrong. And you need to be dispersed. You need to be thrown in jail. That crap needs to end.
Sure does.
Or I'm also in favor of, let's change the law to where if you're impeding me, you get what you get. I get to go through you. And I'm okay with that too. So I don't care how you want to do the laws. We either need to have the law to where people's progress is protected by the law, or they can take their law into their own hands and handle it themselves. You tell me what the rules are. I don't give a shit. I'll go by either one of them. But if you're going to have this law that I can't take the law into my own hands, then the government does have a responsibility to make sure that my rights are looked after.
We had a total solar eclipse back in April. A big chunk of North America got to see it. 15 U.S. states saw the totality.
And people traveled all over the country.
Yeah.
They did.
And then it was overcast. I didn't see. I was driving in California on the West Coast. I mean, I was literally on the coast. It got a little dusky a little bit. I didn't even stop the car and look at it because it.
Yeah, well, we got out there and took a look.
Yeah, we got some of the solar glasses, where you could look at it, or whatever.
Photos, man.
Yeah.
I put up my phone behind the little glass. I got some photos. So,
so it was kind of cool, but there was a time in human history when a lot of people would have been very freaked out by that.
Yeah.
They would have sworn that was a sign that the world was coming to an end right now, and it would have caused all kinds of chaos. And now we know it's just the moon.
Yeah.
Passing between.
What do the flat earthers say about that? By
the way, guys, with time constraints, you guys want to do May and then we can next show do the rest of the year?
Yeah, we can do that. We'll end it. We'll wrap it up here with May. Donald Trump was found guilty on all 34 charges in the hush money trial. Boy, has the tide turned on that one.
Well, and that's, to me, I think the last half of the year is going to have a lot of discussion. So I figured, we'd be here for 3 hours if we don't break it up. But yeah, this is when that shoe dropped. And then at this point, there was a lot of speculation. Is Trump really going to go to jail?
Here's the thing. I said all along, there's no way Donald Trump serves a day in prison. Even if he hadn't won, he was never going to prison. What, you got to lock a dozen Secret Service agents up in the prison with him?
We had a big discussion about that, and I totally agree. But
come on.
But there was a lot of speculation out there. Was he going to go to jail? But if not, was he going to be sentenced to jail? And if he was sentenced, then how would that play out?
Yeah.
But because I don't know what the rules are. If a judge says, okay, I'm remanding you in jail, but then Donald Trump goes, hey, so in other words, if Donald Trump feels threatened as a president, then he has presidential protection from the Secret Service. So to the local police, how are you going to put handcuffs on the President of the United States if he says, I'm not going in handcuffs? Does the Secret Service have an obligation to fight the local police to protect him? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. And we don't want it to turn into that. We hope that calmer heads prevail, but you never know.
All of this was done for one reason and one reason only: to try and upend his chances of being the Republican nominee.
How'd that work for you?
Yep.
Period. That's all.
I think it strengthened him. Actually,
it was a dog and pony show that backfired on him.
I think that all of this actually contributed to Donald Trump winning the election with the margin he did.
Yes, yeah. It galvanized his base.
Yeah. I think he was going to beat Kamala Harris anyhow, or Joe Biden for that matter. I said that early in the year. I felt pretty certain that he was going to be the next president, but for sure, I think that this helped his margin.
Had it not been for this, I think the election, the results would have been much tighter. It would have been closer. But this galvanized his base in a way that nothing else could have.
Yep.
And it worked for him.
It's just interesting how that he has peeled away a lot of what we would call traditional Democrat voters again.
Like Reagan Democrats.
Yes. Yeah, but they're like, man, he just speaks the plain. Even though he's not the best orator in the world, he still speaks somewhat to the common person.
I agree.
I think that's what served him well the first time around and this time, is when he does speak and he does talk about these things, all of the issues that a president has to talk or a candidate has to talk about, he's able to sound more like us than he is them.
Well, here's the thing. I think the reason is because I think, and I'm speaking for all of us, working class people, I think that we don't mind as a whole. I don't think we mind wealthy people. But don't bullshit me about you being wealthy. Yeah. Don't tell me you're one of me and you're not. Yeah. You just say, hey, I'm rich. Now, here's how I got here, or whatever it is. It's the people that are the very wealthy people who try to, oh, shucks, I'm just a good old boy from, so-and-so, or I'm just a good old gal like Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is fucking rich, people. She is wealthy beyond imagine. And she did it in the House of Representatives. You tell me how that happened. And I think that is one of the biggest things, and I'm hoping that this administration can start to peel back that onion some and figure out but put some rules in place on keeping that shit from happening. But I go back to, I think term limits is the number one thing. Well, if we put term limits in place, a lot of that corruption stuff will go away.
I think the term limits, and you know, I've had this argument with a number of people that say, well, we don't need term limits. You know, we got the ballot box. Well, that hasn't worked. The problem that we have with trying to rely on elections as a check on on how long these people serve is that when you get to the primaries, the challengers have no chance. When your turnout for a primary is somewhere at or just under 10% of the total registered voters, and 60 to 75% of those people are going to vote for the incumbent candidate, challengers have no chance. So the incumbent remains in place, and the incumbent in a general election has an edge, if for no other reason, just due to name recognition.
Well, not only that, they get to campaign. I've gotten 3 mailers from Ronnie Jackson.
Yes.
He's not campaigning, but he is in a way. But as Ronnie Jackson is doing this, and this. Well, that's great. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, but he's able to do that while he's serving.
Yes.
Right. Whereas if you're a candidate and don't have that job, you have to dedicate time and resources and everything to campaign that
exactly.
way. Right, exactly. So
keeping them top of mind. Last one on the list here for May: the Iranian president dies in a helicopter crash.
That was a big deal. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a big deal to us, but if you were on that part of the world, especially if that would be like our president dying in a helicopter crash. I mean, no matter how much all of us dislike Joe Biden, I know I definitely to this day don't want Joe Biden to die while in office, and I don't think you guys want to.
And he's been treated, and we all agree that he's been treated very badly by his handlers and his wife allowing all of that to happen.
Well, that's a whole nother issue. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, you don't want the leader of your country to die while in office.
Well, yeah.
And I think one of the dangers when someone like this, the extreme leader of an extreme regime in an extreme country, dies.
Iran. You mean the democracy of Iran?
With someone like that,
Republic of Iran,
with someone like that in power dies, the big worry for us and for other Western countries is does it create a power vacuum?
Yeah.
And what's going to get sucked into that power vacuum? What's going to take the place?
Look what happened in Iraq. As horrible as Saddam Hussein was, as horrible as a person he was, and the horrible things that he did to his people.
Yes.
It was a known,
and he deserved to die for it. He kept everything in line to some degree. He was a madman. He wasn't good. He needed to be gone. But the problem is you almost need to be sure that there's somebody better who's going to take that place, because Iraq did fall into chaos for a while.
But
he may still be. I don't know.
Well, but we sort of had a handle on it for a little while.
Well, and it's so sad when you look at photographs and video of Iran before the mullahs took over, when the Shah was still in power. When it looked like a very westernized country.
Yeah, and by the way, the Shah was no great guy.
Oh, no,
he was no Jesus Christ.
No.
Yeah, that guy took advantage of a whole lot. They had a lot of money. Yeah. He took advantage of a lot of stuff. I mean, and took advantage of his people. It was basically almost like where you had the haves and have-nots.
Yeah.
It was very westernized, and if you were a have, you were shitting in high cotton. But if you were a have-not, you lived in swamp.
But it went from one extreme to the other.
Right.
When the Shah was assassinated and the he
was sent away.
Exiled.
Yeah, exiled.
I'm sorry.
Exiled.
When the Shah was pushed out of power, when he was exiled, and the mullahs came into control in Iran, you saw this dramatic shift into this deep, extreme Islamic, tight-fisted control of everything. Yeah. And it just how many women and children have been slaughtered in that country?
Yeah, it's horrible. It goes
terrible.
back. It goes back
terrible.
to this is why, as many problems as we have in America, this is why democracy is best.
Yeah.
But because and we can argue about democracy. I'm using the broad term of democracy is best. We have people who do come into power. We do have people that take advantage. There's no doubt about it. But they also leave. And their control is not usually so tight-fisted. Even when the government tried to control people with COVID, there was a whole lot of people that said, F off, I'm not doing it. Mm-hmm. A lot of people. Yeah. And so that's the nice thing about democracy, because if you have places like Iran or some of these extreme countries, you have no say, and you better keep your mouth shut. And if you say anything, you're gone.
Well, they try to give the illusion that you have some say, but then when it really comes down to it, yeah.
Well, I think China is the modern example of that. Yeah. Of a country that, you look like you got some freedoms, you look like you got some leeway, but you better watch your mouth when you're talking about the government.
As long as you play the game. Yeah.
You better be in lockstep.
I've heard from some experts that were Western people who spent a lot of time in China, and that's what they're saying is if you go to China, a lot of it does look like suburban America. Picket fence, 2-car garage, 2 cars in the driveway. 2.3 kids, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Brick home and all that. It's nice, but that comes at a cost of your freedom of your thought. Right. You can think your freedom of your speech.
You're playing along.
Yeah, you're playing along.
You're scored on your social behavior. You're scored on how you act and react within the system. And if you react negatively, if you say negative things about the leadership, if you push back against anything, you run the risk of basically disappearing.
Yeah, bad news.
And I'm sure there's many millions of people in China that their families don't know what happened to them.
That's right.
Unfortunately. We'll wrap it up here. We'll continue with our reflection and our look back at 2024 on the next episode of Get It Right Texoma. It's brought to you by Eddie Hill's Fun Cycles, 401 North Scott in downtown Wichita Falls, there since 1966. The brands that you carry, Trey, are
Honda, Kawasaki, Polaris, Segway, KO, and Hustler zero-turn mowers.
Yeah, there you go.
And we just signed up with Denago. That's a newer company. They do have some kid stuff, but they're also going to come out with they have some four-wheelers, and they're coming out with a side-by-side in 2025. And I think it's going to be a little lower price point. So we're excited about them as well.
Yeah, a number of brands. It's like a one-stop shop for power sports, baby.
Well, it's a great place to shop for multiple. Yes. If you come in and say, "Hey, I want a side-by-side," really don't know if this is what I need. It's a great place to come in and get a. You can try them all. Yeah,
there's a variety.
It's a variety
for you. Get them online at EddieHillsFunCycles.com. MacTech Solutions.
Sorry, it's Terry's time. I'm sorry.
MacTech Solutions at 4020 Ray Road, Suite 3B here in Wichita Falls. This is where we video this. We shoot this video each week. It's in the MacTech Solutions podcast studios. 4020 Ray Road, Suite 3B, Finishing Touch Plaza, as it's known to the locals. Yes. And you're open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Apple products of all sorts. The only thing, they don't sell the iPhone, they don't sell the goggles, and there's one other.
But they work on all of it.
Yeah, but you can.
We don't repair the goggles or the Vision Pro headset.
But you do repair the phones.
But everything else, because that's an exception. That's sort of a test thing right now. But anyway, yes, we repair everything else, and we can hook you up. But here's the other thing, we sell it too. Right. Everything but the phone, like you said. Yeah. But we are also taking care of our business customers. If you have a business and you need some technology, whether Windows or Mac, we'd prefer the Mac, but we can help you with the Windows as well. And if you need some help with your technology, because cybersecurity is becoming a bigger deal.
Oh,
it's
huge.
More often, everybody here, and with AI, that's making it even harder.
So. That's right.
So check them out, MacTech Solutions. Again, 4020 Ray Road, Suite 3B, Wichita Falls. Also brought to you by Lolly and Pop Sweet Shop, your online bakery. Online at lpsweet.com. And on Facebook, Lolly and Pop's Sweet Shop, LOLLIE, Lolly and Pop's Sweet Shop on Facebook as well. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. Again, Happy New Year. We'll see you next time. Get It Right Texoma. Until then, take care. We shall see you down